I'm here with my co-host, Sister Orenda Dadkhah, and we have two very special guests. We have Sister Wendy Díaz, who is an author and the co-founder of Hablamos Islam Inc. And we also have a very special guest for the first time. Inshallah, it won't be the last time. We won't scare her away. It's Sister Yvonne. I don't want to kill your last name. Maffei?
Maffei.
Maffei. Okay.
Maffei. Mm-hmm.
And mashallah, I personally been following her for years, so I've been a big fan of my Halal kitchen. And when I can't find anything to cook, I go in there. Some of the recipes are too complicated for my little brain, but I have tried some and they're delicious. So today we're going to be talking about retaining your Hispanic heritage through food and books. And so, mashallah, I'm Mexican. I was born in Mexico City, raised in California. Sister Yvonne took my Shahada in the East Coast.
Okay.
And now I live in Dallas. So I'm from all over the place. So we have West Coast, East Coast. And Sister Wendy, mashallah, who is an author, she recently came out with an awesome book, Eat Empanadas, which my son and I love this book. And we'll talk about about the book, and we'll talk about more about our heritage after Sister Orenda tells us a little statistics about Hispanic, Latino Muslims here in the U.S.
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And thank you for tuning in today for our Hispanic Heritage Month special. So I'm American. We don't have a lot of heritage in terms of how we practice, but, we have the typical things that we will continue as long as it doesn't go against our faith once we embrace Islam. But one of the interesting, we have a lot of converts every year to Islam, but one of the biggest demographics of people that are converting to Islam is from the Latino community, from the Hispanic community, right? So in the last kind of study that was done was in 2017 by the Pew Research Center. And the number of Muslims living in the US, in general Muslims, increased from 2.5 million to 3.5 million within 10 years, from 2007 to 2017. And approximately 250,000 of them are Latino. That's a very large percentage. In 2009, there was only about 1% of US Muslims identified as Latino. And over that 10-year period, it's increased by up to 7%. So it's 7% approximately. That was by 2017. That was the last research I could find on the number of Latinos in the US. And, that's a large group of folks. And I know that I did not have exposure to the Latino community or Hispanic community. And so it's been a big eye-opener for me to realize how many there are out there. And also there's a lot of similarities between the cultures, from the Islamic culture and the Hispanic culture. And, surprisingly, there's about 4,000 Spanish words that have been derived from Arabic. That's a lot. So, and we know that, there's a big history with the Spanish and Islam, but we'll go into that a little bit more. What we're going to talk about today is more so how do you embrace Islam but keep a part of your culture? And I know that you ladies have similar cultures because you're all, I'm kind of the minority here right now, right? You guys have a very strong.
I think we froze or we're having technical difficulties.
Embrace Islam.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Was that something you had to get rid of, or are you able to implement that in your thing? So we're going to talk today about one sister has used her talents in the book area, another sister in the food arena. So that's my statistics for today. If you did not know, we have a very large community out there, folks.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And so I'm trying to look for one of Sister Wendy's articles. So for those of you that don't know, Sister Wendy has written many, many articles, mashallah, that talk about a lot of these statistics. Furthermore, One of my favorite one is the 25 things Latinos want you to know. Where I was, it was an honor to participate in that. And I specifically said that was my quote, that we don't have to compromise being Muslim and being Latino, right? We can embrace and hold on to our heritage, whatever that is, whether we are born abroad or whether our parents, whether we're first generation, like my son, who is half Colombian, half Mexican, but he was born in the States. He still considers himself very Latino. As a matter of fact, today he wore a jacket that said Mexico. And he goes, Mom, today I'm 100% Mexican. So, he'll go with either or. And so I know that happens with the multicultural kids. And I think all of us in this chat today, we have that. So we're going to have a very, inshallah, fruitful conversation. I guess my first question would be to both of you sisters, how has it been within your families after converting? Because obviously, like Sister Orenda said, we do have a lot of commonalities when it comes to principles and values, mashallah, but obviously there's things that have made it very difficult for them to accept us or perhaps understand. I know my family was very ignorant, had never met a Muslim before until I showed up with a headscarf. And then they were like, what happened to you? Who brainwashed you? So how has that been, that transition within your family? I know both of you have been Muslim for seasonal time. I think I'm the new kid on the block here. From all you three ladies, mashallah. So Sister Yvonne, how was that transition for you and your family? And can you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Ohio, Midwestern girl. My father is actually born in Italy, Sicily, and my mom is Puerto Rican. So I have half of my heritage in the Latin world. And so I was dealing with, I'm an all-American kid, two very strong ethnic backgrounds. And to be honest, I thought that the Puerto Rican side might be a little bit more difficult or challenging to navigate when I became Muslim. But they were actually so super nice and supportive. I think a lot of it had to do with, at the time, that I converted and I started learning about halal food, because I love my family so much, I really didn't want food to be an issue, like a barrier with them. And so that was the time I started digging into my grandmother's recipes. She used to bring pasteles back from Puerto Rico, and that's like the Puerto Rican tamale. And I started getting really interested in her. She had passed by the time that I became Muslim. So it was around that time that I started to kind of dig into like her recipes. What did she cook? What could I make for my family when I would go back home? Because I lived in Chicago at the time. And when I'd go back and we'd have family visit, I really wanted to make traditional Puerto Rican recipes. And that really bonded us because, like, for example, my mom and I went to the one Caribbean store we knew in Cleveland. We got all the ingredients to make pasteles, which was something she had never done before with her mother. And so for us, those are memories we have. And I learned a lot about my grandparents, my family, and just digging into the food and the food history. And then putting some of those recipes into my cookbook, dedicating an entire chapter on Latin cuisine, not all Puerto Rican recipes, but because I grew up around lots of different varieties, Colombian, Cuban, Mexican food, it really kind of showed a respect that came from my heart that it showed that I wanted to really bond with them and they really took that to heart, and I never had any issues with them on that side. So I think food for me has always been the bridge to any barriers, and I think it's that one thing that if you can get past it, because there's a lot of pork in our cuisine, so it was kind of touchy, like, oh, please don't put the sazon goya thing, in the rice because it has pork in it, and maybe, oh, we didn't know, so it's just also like I realized how you talk about things, how you approach the differences, and I was so fortunate that they were so wonderful and so supportive, and to this day they still are. And I have to attribute a lot of that to the love of the food, and them feeling respected. That, okay, yes, you embrace this different religion, and my grandfather wouldn't ask me directly why I wore the headscarf, but he would ask my mom, and her response was, Dad should say Virgin Mary wore something very similar, and he'd say, "Oh, okay." He was fine. They were so nice to me, and so simplistic in their questioning, and I don't know. I just got very lucky, but I do think food was the one thing that connected us, and then we were able to just really make some great memories through that time.
Mashallah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And we see that at every gathering, right? Like for us, I know when we have a potluck at Embrace or whatever, right? The fall potluck is coming up. We may not see them at the halakha, but when we have social halakha where there's food, I mean, automatically the flaws come, right? Mashallah. So food does connect.
So important.
It's so important.
A lot of times they don't know, like sometimes they didn't even know like certain things were in the modern day, products and things like that. Otherwise, they would have gladly taken them out. But I think we kind of grow together and we learn together if we're willing to be open and communicate. And that's different for everybody. Like the different levels of communication, and we can only meet people where they are. But I think our cultures are full of love, and that's something that we really have to tap into, is that love part, not the differences, but that core, the family value, and at the core of all of that is the love for each other. So when we tap into that, I think it shows, who we really are at the end of the day.
And so here in the U.S., we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15 to October 15. For those of you wondering what is this episode about, and so we're talking to our sisters about their passions. And Sister Yvonne is from Halal, My Halal Kitchen, and Sister Wendy, who is a very familiar face here, and she's part of our Embrace family, mashallah. She's a writer. I want her to tell us about your transition. Was that similar with food? And now, alhamdulillah, you have a very, very unique, because I've tried to write a lot, and it takes me a lot of time to write even one paragraph. So you have a special, unique talent when you put your mind to it, from a poem to a whole book, mashallah. So I didn't bring it, but Sister Yvonne, she has a book called From Puerto Rico. Well, what's the name of it? No. Sister Wendy. Oh. We'll share yours in a minute.
Okay.
The other Puerto Rican one.
We're
muted.
Let's see.
De Puerto Rico to Islam with Love. That's my collection of poetry and a little bit of memoir in that. So yes, food is everyone loves to eat. So alhamdulillah, that's something we all have in common, and we can definitely bond through food. And it's funny that you asked me, how was my transition? When I remember when I first became a Muslim, there was an individual who said to me, "How can you be Muslim if you're from Puerto Rico?" And because Puerto Rican food, there is a lot of pork involved in some of the typical traditional dishes. But in reality, so there's a historical reason why, because during when Puerto Rico was discovered, right? We have Indigenous Day coming up, Columbus Day. When Puerto Rico was discovered, there was an Inquisition happening at the same time in Spain, and also in the New World that came across the Atlantic. And in Puerto Rico, there were actually people who were accused of being crypto Muslims. Even I believe it was the first governor of Puerto Rico was accused of being a crypto Muslim. He was being an undercover Muslim. And so one of the things that the Inquisition did in Puerto Rico was that they would force people to eat pork as a sign that they were actually loyal to the Christian church. So eating pork became just kind of part of the identity, right? It was forced on the people there. And so that's why you see that there are a lot of dishes that contain pork, but just as easily that pork can be substituted for something else. And alhamdulillah, I haven't had any problem with cooking and just changing the dishes in a way that is suitable for us as Muslims to eat. Alhamdulillah. Of course, with family members, a little bit different because you have to kind of tell them, well, I can't eat. And they, I don't know if anybody have seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but there's like a similar situation in that movie where the grandmother is serving the boyfriend of the main character a plate of meat, and he says, well, the girlfriend says he's a vegetarian, and she's like, oh, it's okay, this is lamb, right? So in Puerto Rico, you'll tell someone like, I can't have pork, and they're like, oh no, don't worry, this is just ham. So you realize that that's pork also, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an educational moment, alhamdulillah.
Absolutely.
And I've gotten a lot of my own family members to stop eating pork, and some of them actually weren't eating pork even before I converted to Islam. Like, for example, my brother, he stopped eating pork when he was in high school. He's 4 years older than I am, so and he will not have it, and so a lot of my family members have taken that just for their own health.
Yeah, and I have a question for you guys because you do have a lot of pork. We did a lot of holidays. We had hams and stuff like that previous to me being in Islam. Did you guys explain to them the benefits health-wise? Is that how they stopped eating the pork?
For myself, I mean, I just explained to them why we don't eat it, and then also bringing in the health reasons.
Yeah.
To my closest family, yeah. I mean, I just I didn't really make it about religion at first. It was more like, the reasons, and I also went into the historic aspects of why it became so popular culturally, via the Inquisition in Spain, and just lots of conversations about it. But most of my family still eats it, and I just avoid it. But my mom never buys it anymore. So it just depends. I think sometimes how much time you get with somebody to talk about it, and if they decide to embrace that or not. But you're lucky if you get to have that conversation over time, because I think people, when you rationalize it and from a health perspective, a lot of people are much more interested than if it's just,
the religious aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I've found. I used to go to a naturopath doctor in New Jersey, actually. He had helped create some of the first men's gyms across the U.S. with Jack LaLanne. And he was a pretty famous naturopath doctor. He worked with a lot of celebrities and whatnot. And he formulated all his own, pharmacy of natural products. And he told me when I went in, because I was really ill, and I went for a major detox for a year. And he's like, and he's Christian, if you want any sort of health, don't ever touch pork. And I was like, really? Well, I'm Muslim. I don't eat pork, so I don't have to worry about that. But I was like surprised to hear him say that. So I learned that from a Christian.
Yeah.
The health benefits and the health, the negative aspects of it, of consuming pork. So that was an eye-opener.
I also grew up with my father was really big into kosher. He didn't keep it or anything, but he was just really interested in the way that Jewish people ate. And he had brought home a book one day from the grocery store. Those like little books they used to have, tiny little books they used to have when you're checking out. They don't have those anymore, but they used to. And it was just about the way that the Jewish people ate. And he would say to me, like, this is so interesting. Like, they don't eat any pork. And he would go into the reasons why. And he just found it really fascinating. And he didn't really want to eat it anymore. Of course, but later on he was like, well, bologna is not really pork. I was like, no, it is. People just think pork is the actual, cuts of it that they get. They don't really realize it's all the deli meats or what's in the food. That's like a whole nother level of a conversation. But I think people are kind of open to not just Islam, but like a worldview on the way people eat in different parts of different cultures and so on. And it's also kind of a really interesting conversation to have with people.
Absolutely. And so when you guys get invited during Ramadan, I know for Ramadan, when I was in the East Coast, I always made sure I made a Mexican theme. You remember that, Wendy? A Mexican theme iftar, right? Where I would bring my heritage. I remember one time my apartment was super tiny and it was like 500 square feet. There was like 38 sisters, sardine back to back. And they were there for the Mexican food, right? Alhamdulillah, I found this restaurant where I took the sabija chicken and they made the things for me. But then if not, I had to make it by myself. And I think all cuisines have a lot of work, and I'm just not a very big cook, to say the least. Pandemic got me cooking things I never thought I would. And now my son misses it, but I guess it's just the busy schedule. But for you guys, do you guys make it a theme when you guys are going somewhere? Is that something that you like to bring, your heritage with you, or cook? I know here in Dallas, I'm always asked, do you make Mexican tamales? And I don't know how to make them. So I'm like, no. And a lot of people have tasted them, liked them, but they know that they are made from lard. And so they can't just go to the store and buy it from the frozen area. So anytime I'm invited somewhere, are you going to bring tamales? Are you going to bring Mexican food? So do you guys experience that as well at your gatherings? Is this something that you make a point to bring your heritage or your culture through the food?
I definitely, I think like something like tamales, I have learned to make those, and I put that recipe in my cookbook, in my Latin cuisine section of the My Halal Kitchen cookbook, because I thought it was such an important, iconic recipe. But when I've had people over, I tend to do lamb tacos, because most Muslims I know from like Indo-Pakistani or Arab culture, they love lamb, right? So I would say, okay, that's the meat they like, but I'm just going to make it in the slow cooker, do tacos. But if they don't really want tacos, then I have rice off to the side that can just do shredded lamb with rice. So I kind of make it so they're not like so surprised where they're going to go hungry that they don't really want that. Because some people will say to me, sister, I can't eat corn, or something like that. So I've learned over the years to kind of keep it cultural, but at the same time give options so that they have some other things. Because most people I know, like, they're just really not used to tamales and the taste. So I always would have something off to the side as well. But lamb is a great thing to cook for parties in the Muslim world, because you can make it any culture you want, but it's that meat that almost everybody I know likes.
And for you, Wendy? You're muted.
Pretty much, me, empanadas all the way. That's my go-to whenever I'm going to a gathering and it's a potluck and I have to bring something. I usually do empanadas because everybody seems to enjoy it, and there are variations across different cultures. So I just try to make sure to do different ones. Like, for example, there was one gathering where I was making empanadas, and there were some people that were vegan, so I just made them with lentils. So I just made lentils and kind of made it into ground beef consistency, and then used that, and alhamdulillah, they were happy. So I think that kind of thing is very versatile, so you can do different things with it. But definitely, I like to cook as well, and I do try to stick with Puerto Rican dishes at home. So and that's what I know, and that's what I grew up with. So pretty much.
What about Ecuadorian? Do you bring that to the kitchen as well? Because your husband's Ecuadorian, so.
Yeah, I've tried a few things that they make, alhamdulillah, and they've been okay. They have, on the one hand, they have some very simple dishes like churrasco, which is just white rice with like a steak, and they'll put like a fried egg on top of it. Some, like type of onions or something with it, and that's it. It's very simple. But then on the other hand, they have something called fanesca, which is a soup that's made with codfish and all kinds of beans and grains, and that I have not tried to tackle because it's just so complicated. They even put peanut butter in it. I don't even know how it works, but the end product is so delicious. So I mean, I've tried some things, the simpler things, I would say, and I still have to learn, I guess. Are we all right?
Yes, we have. We have. I think we lost it for a minute, but it's back.
Sorry. Yeah. So subhanallah. Now that we mentioned food, now that we sister Yvonne, can you share your book again so people can see it? It's on the comments. We're also going to share Sister Wendy's link to one of our favorite books, the Eid Empanada, inshallah. And so inshallah, you guys go and get it. Both Sister Yvonne and Sister Wendy, she has one recipe on empanadas, but Sister Yvonne's books are all yummy recipes. And by the looks of it, or what she said, she has them section off. So that's pretty interesting that she has a Latino section.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So in the My Halal Kitchen book, there are no Middle Eastern or South Asian recipes, and that was done on purpose because the point of it was to show how to make any cuisine halal. But I really dedicated sections to like American cuisine, Italian cuisine, French cuisine, things that I really know, and of course Latin cuisine, because I wanted people to really start to appreciate that anything could be made halal, and particularly the Latin side. And so I start off by doing like, how do they make the seasonings, like achiote, adobo, sofrito, because you need those, to season. So they don't have to buy those packets, because packets can have a lot of preservatives, but also they have pork flavoring in them. And so I go into like Cuban sandwiches, because Cuban sandwiches are made with pork, but I found substitutes that taste great with that. And when I was testing these recipes, it was so weird. In the test kitchen that I was working, I had a Puerto Rican family that owned the test kitchen, and they were trying all the recipes. Because they really knew the food, and so they would come back to me and say, "Are you serious? There's no pork in this?" They're like, "The flavor's so delicious," and so that made me realize, like, alhamdulillah, like, I'm so glad I can kind of recreate the flavors as authentically as possible without going down that road. And so I do like, goat tacos, lamb carnitas, carne guisada, habichuelas, and then your just basic white rice, your plátanos, flan, things like that. Chicken tamales, red chili sauce, which is a different way of making it. I know everybody makes it different. And then of course, no alcohol pina colada, because those are really important. And then the Ramadan book, I do empanadas in here. I do like my mom's way of making Puerto Rican empanadas, beef empanadas. That was the first book I wrote, and it was more about Ramadan cooking, but also, again, not from this Middle Eastern, South Asian perspective. Oh, not because I don't like those cuisines, but because I wanted to make the point that, again, any cuisine can be made halal, and also like we're born. I mean, we're living here. I was born and raised in America. I'm also a very American kid, so I had lots of recipes that I just grew up with that are my comfort foods. And I know other people feel the same, or other people's kids. I was a teacher in Islamic schools, and the kids that I was teaching, they're American kids with the heritage of a Middle Eastern or Indo-Pakistani. They went through the same things that a lot of other kids go through, where they want pancakes, they want burgers, they want those American things. So I think that was what I addressed in the other book, because I just really felt very passionate about the fact that, keep our heritage, know those recipes, preserve them. That's what cookbooks are for. But also keep in mind that, we're blended. And food is that one thing that when we make it difficult, we make conversations difficult, we make relationships difficult. So when we make the food easy, everything else is smoother.
Inshallah. I like your book that you have, that you can create your own recipes in the book. And you have a little section there where you can make note of, like, if you have a recipe you clipped out, right?
Oh, the
And then
cooking
you
journal.
can, yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes. Thank you for mentioning. Yes, that's for people. You're right, to preserve their own recipe. So you take your recipe that maybe you're copying from my book or whatever, but you're editing it to your style and your taste, and then you can save the book and pass it down to your kids.
Mashallah, that's awesome. So now, Wendy, tell us about Omar, little Omar, and empanadas, the Eat Empanada. Actually, my son really liked his book, and my son has grown up with Sister Wendy's books since he was 5. So this is one of the latest ones. And so one of the things that I appreciate about this book is that towards the end, Sister Wendy actually goes into a little glossary and is even teaching Spanish words. And a lot of our Spanish words, like Sister Orenda mentioned at the beginning, derive from the Arabic language. For those of you that do not know, like pantalon, right? Pantalon, and very similar, over 4,000 words. And so I thought that was very interesting that Sister Wendy added that. She also added the empanada recipe. But I want you to share with us, even the bilingual. I like the portion of like the bilingual brainstorm, chapter 4, and how we do that now as well. So if you can talk to us a little bit about that and how that heritage came out in here.
So yes, this book, which is, by the way, I wanted to let you know, it's now available in hardcover, and I also have the Spanish version.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so now completely in Spanish. Now it's available. So yeah, one of the things I always try to emphasize in the books that I've written is for people to either have the books be bilingual or share something about the Spanish language in the books. And so I try to usually put a glossary in the back with vocabulary. In this book, I in that chapter that you mentioned, bilingual brainstorm. So the main character is brainstorming something that he has to do for an assignment, to not give the story away. And when he enters his home, things become bilingual because this is a Latin American Muslim kid who's given an assignment to do. And so when he's at home, you start to see the interactions between him and his family and how they use Spanish vocabulary, and it's just intertwining there with the English, and that's the reality for a lot of families, right? And not necessarily Latino families, but also families with other heritages where they're coming, or mixed blended families, right? Like Sister Orenda's, where you're coming in and using different words from both languages and just mixing them together, and that becomes part of who you are. Mashallah, like Sister Yvonne mentioned, we're blending our cultures, our food, and all of this. So, alhamdulillah. And one of the perfect examples of how we do that cultural, blending is one of the most famous like empanadas in Puerto Rico. If you go to one of the street vendors and ask, they have pizza empanadas. So the stuffing is actually cheese and pizza sauce, and you can even have pepperoni or meat inside. So that's like one way that we're doing that. So yeah. So this book is all about celebrating our heritage, our food, the things that bring us all together and can help us bond together over food, pretty much.
Yeah, and this is across the board, just like you said, Sister Wendy. Today we're highlighting you ladies because of Hispanic Heritage Month, but it goes across the board for any culture, that you're incorporating into your life. So it is possible. And when you embrace Islam, you don't have to get rid of that. You just have to make sure it complements your faith, not going against what your faith is. So we just toss those things that don't go with it out the window.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes we make things even more difficult. I remember growing up in Islam, like literally like when I took my Shahada, you change the wording, right? So I remember where everything was haram. and it became so overwhelming. It was like haram this, haram that, haram this. And I was like, can I breathe? Is that halal? And I used to be very sarcastic because it was very overwhelming until one of my teachers said, listen, everything is halal except pork and alcohol at any given place that you go to. So look out for these two things, right? So that became more appealing and less restricted than saying this is haram, ham is haram, pork is haram. Like if you list the things that are haram, if you cook it this way, if you do this, but it's so simplistic, but we make the religion so hard and it becomes so overwhelming, especially when you enter the faith. So I saw a comment, that this is wonderful that there's resources, and these two ladies bring some wonderful resources, not only educating through books, but also the books that Sister Yvonne wrote. She's given us those tools that we need to make sure that we keep our heritage, and inshallah also create our own recipes and pass them on. And that's something that I personally regret. My grandmother was an awesome cook, but nobody kept her recipes. And to this day, I kick myself in the behind because I wish I knew how to cook like my grandmother. And she passed away 3 years ago. And it's just, you can't, my aunts have tried and it doesn't taste like my grandmother. So I like that, Sister Yvonne, that you encourage us to actually write down, pass it on to our children, create these memories. And this is something that I personally, I forgave myself, but it's very difficult because I really wish I can transport myself to the days where I sat with my grandmother and ate her meals. And unfortunately, I can't do that. I will continue playing because she was very natural. So she had the actual like cloves and she had the molcajete, so she did everything like naturally, and it's difficult. So I do appreciate you ladies that are you keeping your heritage and that you're bringing it to light and you're bringing it as resources to our converts, because our converts sometimes go through these waves of not knowing if they're going to be able to keep their heritage or to be able to keep their traditions, and it's very heartbreaking. Wouldn't you?
It's a must because I think that Islam never doesn't tell anybody to just forget who you are and to break ties and to not be emotional. I mean, take everything you can from your culture and why are there look at the Muslims around the world. They're all very different from I lived in Turkey for a while. You got people from 5 different regions of Turkey. They all do things a different way, but at the core they're Muslim, okay, for the most part. You in any other countries, Uzbekistan, Iran, wherever you look in the world, they have adopted, they've kept their culture. Mm-hmm. They do halal in their way. Their foods are different. We are no different than that. Mm-hmm. We are just, we were keeping our halal food. We were doing things a certain way. But our culture is our culture. And no one said we have to become Arabs. We don't have to become South Asian. We are who we are. And I think that was something I personally had to learn kind of the hard way in the beginning because I became Muslim almost 20 years ago and it was such a minority back then. And being a convert in the community and like just really trying to kind of fit in as well, because a lot of people would make comments about our food not being halal. And I said, well, what do you know? Like, I know that what I'm eating and preparing and actually cooking that traditional food ensures that everything that's in it and it was healthier. So like there was a lot of benefit to digging into my own culture and figuring things out. But I think one thing I've learned along the way is to stand up for who you are. And just because, we're still a minority, okay, yes, we're growing, but we have a culture. We have a beautiful culture. And we just need to hang on to all of that and make what we can, in a halal way. That's it. No, it's no different from any other Muslims around the world at all.
I think that is so important what you just said, because I think a lot of people who embrace Islam do get lost for a little bit in whatever demographic of people they're around in the masjid or in the community. Sure. you adopt that and you think that's how you have to be.
Yeah.
And, same. I was 27 years ago, embraced Islam, and it took me a while to figure out I can still be me. Yes. And I can still hold on to how I grew up with some adjustments.
Yeah.
And be confident about it.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I remember I've had people tell me, you're too American or and I'm like, wait a second. We have some work to do in our community about the identity, that we have. And there is nothing wrong with being American. There is nothing wrong with being Latino. There's nothing wrong with who you are. You adopted a faith that billions of other, people are in this world, but you are you. Yes, that may sound very individualistic to some people, but we have to retain ourselves as well. Otherwise we get lost, and that's where all the mix-ups happen. That's where the brainwashing happens. That's where all of that stuff that doesn't feel right isn't right, because it's taking us away from way too much of who we really are at the core. And I think that's a really important thing. I hope that like new Muslims really can get from our experiences, is that, it's important to be who you are, learn the tools, learn how to pray, learn to fast, learn all the things, but don't lose who you are and your family. Don't lose the people that are important to you, the support systems you have, your culture. Because when you take that all away, I think that's where people get really lost, depressed, sad, all the things that Islam doesn't say. Like, you have to still be like, we don't have to make ourselves miserable. That's not what Islam is.
And hopefully Islam should just, complement us. It should make us a better version of who we were.
Yeah.
Is simply what it should be.
Exactly. Absolutely. Before this episode ends, I really want to encourage everyone, and inshallah we'll probably post it next, either today or tomorrow, before Hispanic Heritage Month is over. The article I was telling you about, Sister Wendy, 25 things Latino want you to know. I think it's very important for you to go through that. And it's a lot of what we're speaking here today. So 25 things that Latino Muslims want you to know. Among those, I appreciate the fact that it was very real, and we love it because, here at Reverts Reality, we try to keep things very real. One of the things is that we want to be accepted. Just like Sister Yvonne said, just like Sister Wendy said, we just want to be accepted. Don't question our Islam because we are Latinos. Half of the time, I get asked this. As a matter of fact, when I was on my way to Hajj, I prayed at the airport. I was wearing an abaya that said Mexico. As a matter of fact, Sister Wendy's mother-in-law made it for me for the World Cup in 2014. And I prayed, and there was a plane leaving to Mexico, and then our plane leaving to Medina. After praying, one of the sisters asked me if I was Muslim because my abaya said Mexico. And then on the other side, the gentleman that I asked to take a picture of me, who was Mexican, he's like, "Wait, why are you going there? Your dress says Mexico, and you're speaking Spanish." So I think it's very important for us to educate ourselves. If you don't know, ask. It's very important for us to ask and not assume. You can be from any corner of the world and be Muslim. And I want that to be very, very clear. But definitely we will be sharing this article, and we want everyone on here to share it and to learn a little bit more about our rich culture and what we really want. Not every Hispanic, not every Latino was in prison. Not every Latino that came into Islam was in a gang. We come from different backgrounds. We're educated. We have PhD holders. I'm working on my master's. We have, authors of books, mashallah. We have Sister Yvonne, who also is an author. And we have so many different Latinos that are giving back. And this is what this month is, to learn more about the Hispanic culture and to, inshallah, ask questions if you have to. Respect is one of the key aspects that I want everyone to take away. We have to be very mindful and very respectful to one another. And we tend to lose that when we want to over excel on our own identities. And what I mean by that is I'm actually taking a class right now based on identities. And it talks a lot about that, how we water down our own identities to try to fit in. I think Sister Yvonne mentioned a little bit about that. So we have to be very cautious and embrace who we are, like these ladies have said throughout the episode today. Love, learn who you are. Perhaps you don't even know your own heritage. Dig in, you know. If you have 1/4 Native American and 1/4 Ecuadorian or Cuban or Spaniard from Spain or what have you, learn more about it. It will make you appreciate not only your ancestors, where they come from, their struggles, and you will learn to love yourself right for who you are. So it's extremely important to educate ourselves first. And we say this every time: educate yourself, your family, and then go outside and educate others, inshallah. Ladies, we're coming towards the end of our episode. This was very fruitful, and I'm already hungry. I'm not fasting, but I am hungry. So, Sister Wendy, Sister Yvonne, any last words as to our topic today? Any advice for our viewers? We have viewers from everywhere: Thailand, Pakistan. We have viewers from all around the world that perhaps this is the first time that they see a Mexican, a Muslim, or Latina Muslim, inshallah. So any advice that you would want, any message that you would want our audience to hear, inshallah? Either one can go.
Well, I'd like to advise, like, if anybody's here is watching who's not Latino but maybe part of a community, a Muslim community around the globe, I think that we need to work in our communities very, very intently to eliminate racism in our own communities and eliminate misconceptions, and to really be better at integrating different cultures, and just really dispelling any myths about, you know, any particular cultures, not just Latinos, but Latinos is a great place to start, and to figure out who are those individuals in your community that can help with these discussions, because I think they're really important. A lot of times in our communities, we talk about things that are way out there and political and all this, but the stuff that really gets to the core of our emotions and our heart, and really affects people from even going to the masjid or being part of the community. You know, a lot of these actions kind of push people away. I think that this is a great topic that you brought up, and it's a great opportunity to say this is a good time for discussions to start happening within the community, and to really start embracing each other much, much better.
Sister Wendy?
I wanted to say a lot of the people from the South Asian communities, Arab communities, and maybe even from Africa, they're here, and that we as new Muslims may interact with them, and we feel that they may be imposing, you know, perhaps some of their own cultural practices. We have to kind of also understand that they're having some culture shock. They're dealing with a culture shock of their own. They're living here in this country, and they're seeing things, and they're like, oh no, well, this is not the way that Muslims, you know, were back home, or this is not the way that my family practices. And of course, it's up to them. They need to they have some learning to do about that Islam is for everyone, and that we can continue to have our identity and practice Islam at the same time. And one thing that I've come to realize is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that he sent a messenger to every nation, then we have to understand that Islam was here in this part of the world before this country was even established. So Islam is just as much ours as it is theirs, as it is for anyone, right? Islam is worldwide. So we have to start really understanding that, get it into our heads that, okay, Islam, there is no monolith. Islam is just, it's multicultural, it's diverse, and that's the beauty of it, that we can stand side by side in prayer with people from every country imaginable, right? So I mean, it is. It all it takes is just education and just continuing to write our stories, sharing our recipes, sharing who we are. All of us have a duty to just educate our families, educate each other in whatever way, and using whatever talent Allah has given us to do so.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, ladies. No, this has been a wonderful conversation. We want to ask all our viewers to please share if you have any questions. We will put our both of our authors in the messages so you guys can contact them, inshallah. So they both do speaking engagements, mashallah. They have a lot to give. They're wonderful resources in their own specialty. So we want to highly encourage you to look them up, My Halal Kitchen, and Sister Wendy Díaz from Hablamos Islam. She has 2 pages, so do look them up, inshallah. And ladies, I want to thank you personally for accepting this invitation. It is a very special month for us and the opportunity for us to actually share a little bit of our kitchens and a little bit of our stories. And like Sister Wendy said, it's very important for us to write our own narrative and write our own stories. So I appreciate both of you ladies for actually doing it for us. You guys are writers. You guys came up with this. I know Sister Yvonne has been working on this project for many, many years, mashallah. And so I want to thank you for that because, there's no excuse anymore. You can do everything. And so the only opportunity,
hello.
yes, everything, mashallah. So do check out these ladies' pages. We will put them in here, inshallah. Tomorrow we will have the Friday reminder. Sister Jackie from our Pennsylvania chapter is inshallah hosting that. We are also following up with the campaign for I Am Mafia. So don't forget to put on your yellow hijabs and the hashtag I Am Mafia. And then Saturday morning, Sister Orenda, what happens at Embrace?
So Saturday morning, sisters from around the globe come in, and we find a lot of sisters who are looking and really, really wanting a sisterhood. A lot of them are new converts who don't have outlets where they live, don't have Muslim friends, maybe don't have a mosque to go to. And so we decided to start a sisters chat on Saturdays, and we're there every Saturday. Started during the pandemic. We're still there every Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that's Texas time, Central Standard Time. And, we're in there to have good company, good sisterhood. It's a drama-free, judgment-free zone. And, we can talk about our issues, and we can reflect and learn together.
Yes, inshallah. And so just look out for all the different programming that Embrace has. Many of our chapters are starting to do in person. So do look out for that. Here in Texas, we will have our first potluck outdoor, the fall potluck coming up in November. So do save the date for that, where we will bring food and connect through food, inshallah. So I want to thank you ladies once again for accepting our invitation here at Embrace. That this is your house and this is your program. So you're welcome anytime. For our viewers, don't forget to share. Tonight is also Quran study, so do join us for that. Until next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. My name is Nahela Morales, and this is Sister Orenda Dadkhah, my co-host. We'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.